Gets open for three. Dagger!
The kick, and here it comes. Swing and a miss! And a World Series Game 7 winning Curly W is in the books.
Washington Capitals are the 2018 Stanley Cup champions.
You like that? You like that? I like that.
You gotta like that, right?
My approval ratings keep going up.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
Welcome in. This is Defeating the Curse live on the Contender Network. My name is Joe. The Washington football team has done the improbable. They have gone on a 2-game win streak, and everyone in DC should be celebrating. This is actually a really big deal. And over the next hour or so, or we'll see how long we can go, we'll see how long the Contender will let me talk, I'm gonna try to temper expectations. There's a lot of playoff talk. I'm already hearing on local radio. This team is 4-6. But before we get into all of that stuff, and there's a lot to get into as far as non-game specific things, I want to talk about this game. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned here for how this team may win games moving forward. But before we get into that even, show is live on Twitter, it's live on Facebook, it's live on YouTube, and of course on the Contender. You can call in anytime, 855-908-5668. I'm going to leave it up on the crawl so anybody can see it. Feel free to call in. Would love to have folks call in and chime in on what they saw today. The Washington football team went to Carolina. Half of our show here was picking them to win. The other half was to lose, and one, being Stevie, was, he was pulling for a tie. And I think that had more to do with FanDuel bets than it did with the actual product on the field or not on the field. But regardless, it was kind of a split. We were split in-house. And it's one of these things where, when we look at this team, we are constantly reassessing, do we have our quarterback of the future? I think at this point, it's safe to say, no, we do not. Do we have our potential running back of the future? Maybe. He keeps putting the ball on the carpet, but, overall, Antonio had a pretty good game. Do we have, pieces for the offensive line? Offensively, outside of Terry McLaurin, is there any other piece that really has been solidified over the first 10 games of the season? I think it's debatable. To be honest. But a 2-game win streak is a big deal, especially this late in the season. And I will add that I think it's a big deal that they actually, given who they beat. Look at who they beat in the last couple of weeks here, right? Last week, Tom Brady comes to DC, plays a very average game for Tom Brady. And obviously, it's nothing. Every talking head in DC, every person on this show, every person on every show that covers DC sports had the Patriots, had the Buccaneers winning that game and winning it fairly easily. It's sad to say, but fairly easily. And the football team handled business, and they looked pretty good doing it. Chase goes down, and then ultimately we start hearing, okay, well, how does the team recover from losing Chase? One school of thought says you can't. He's too good of a talent, even though he's having a down season. We'll see what happens. The other school of thought, which personally I'm starting to buy into, I was on the fence, but I'm starting to buy into it, especially after today's performance against the Panthers. There's something to be said about team ball. And when you lose an all-pro, just super talent like Chase is, again, stats aside, from a talent perspective, no one's going to question just how good he is. He's got the raw skills to be disruptive. He's got the skills to get to the quarterback. He can cover in the flat as well. So, it's unfortunate he went down. But today, this defense is coming into a game facing, arguably one of the top 3, top 2, top 4, top 5 at worst running backs in the game in Christian McCaffrey and CMC and Cam Newton, who, you say what you want, he's still able to play the position. It is somewhat comical that Carolina basically traded him or walked away from him a few seasons ago, and it was going to be Kyle Allen, and then it was going to be, and then they traded obviously for Bridgewater, and then it's Sam Darnold, and now it's back to Cam. So that franchise got a lot of money tied up in the quarterback position. Right now, Cam is being paid to replace himself, which is that's a mess. And thankfully here in DC, we're not in that situation here, although we have a revolving carousel of characters and players. But Taylor is right now the starter, and he played, 2 games now back to back well enough to win. And I think I put this on Twitter a little short while ago, and I see some people are commenting on it. What's going to be lost here in the stats, because it's a win, Taylor only completed 16 passes. He only attempted 22. He completed 16 total. And I think there's something there. It's not going to be discussed, ad nauseum this week that he only completed 16. 3 of them went for touchdowns. 25% or 22.5% of his passes were touchdowns today, or completed passes were touchdowns today. But he played well enough to win. The story coming into this game really was it was all about Carolina. I don't think most people, the talking heads nationally, I don't think people expected the football team to be able to beat Carolina in Carolina, given that, the Carolina defense, I think was ranked, 6th overall, if I'm not mistaken? I think so. Sorry, no. They're ranked second ranked defense overall. That's a pretty good defense. Okay, we'll see what the football team is going to be able to do. They definitely struggled at some parts today, or some points in the game today, to string together or keep drives alive. But then at other times, especially to open the third quarter, man, it was very reminiscent of last week against Tampa Bay. They just came out and just methodically moved down the field as if like on a mission or with purpose. And they looked great doing it. They looked like it was a balanced win. And that's the, I know most people can't see all my notes here, but the word that just kind of keeps repeating over and over in my notes, balance on offense. Heineke didn't have to complete more than 16 passes. It would have been nice if he had hit, McLaurin. I think there was a 20-yard route that was he missed him high across the middle of the field, and then he missed him for the touchdown as well. I mean, and we'll get into that a little bit when we get a little bit into the details quarter by quarter, or at least the spirit of quarter by quarter. But you look at this, and again, for me, balance. It's balance. They were able to consistently run the ball. There was times where they ran the ball 4 or 5 plays in a row, swapping in between Antonio, JD, and we saw quite a bit of Jared Patterson today. And I think some of that is probably due to Antonio fumbling in the red zone. Maybe we weren't supposed to see Jared Patterson carry the ball 7 times, but they ran the ball effectively. Antonio averaged 5 yards a carry, McKissick over 6. Taylor also, when he scrambled, when he tucked and ran, he looked pretty good doing the same. I mean, and there was one that was a called play late in the game in the fourth quarter. I think it was on 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 12, a designed run or sweep for the quarterback that looked perfect. Stayed in bounds, clock keeps running, and then, of course, a couple plays later, we'll talk about it when we get there, Antonio Gibson fails to do the same. He actually doesn't stay in bounds. He doesn't get the first down. He doesn't stay in bounds. The clock stops, and we'll get into all that. But let's go just kind of from the jump here. Coming into the game, there was a couple things that the Washington football team we had talked about that they had to do. They had to control the clock. Number one, control the clock. Consistently this season, the games that the football team has been able to stay competitive in and ultimately win, they have either been in a timeshare, or there was some type of equilibrium as far as the amount of time they had the ball, or they just straight dominated time of possession. And today, I think they had the ball, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for just over 36 minutes. So that's a 10-minute advantage, or 9 minutes and change advantage over the Carolina Panthers. So they did that. So we'll put one in the win column there. Coming in, control the clock, limit the turnovers. Taylor, he had a couple get away from him. There was one that obviously he had nothing to do with. Antonio Gibson in the red zone, you just can't fumble the ball in the red zone. And you look at the score and you think, okay, 27-21, maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance that this score is closer to 35 points. If Antonio doesn't fumble, maybe they get a touchdown. At worst, Joey's been kicking great. At worst, they get 3 more points. It's 30-21. It's a little bit more of a, we won't say convincing win, but a more all-around win. I think they'll feel a little bit better about hitting 30. Regardless, okay, I mean, one turnover, you should be able to survive one turnover in the modern NFL, and they did. Ultimately, it just sucks that it came in the red zone on a drive where he was running hard and running really well. And on top of that, I really don't know what to make of the fumble itself, because it literally looked like the defender, as he was coming, I'm blanking on the name of the Panther that was coming through the line. He literally just came through the line and he just pulled on his fingers, and the ball came out. And Sanchez, who was calling the game for Fox later in the broadcast. The fumble was in the second quarter. Later, I think it was in the late third quarter, I made a note that Mark Sanchez actually commented that Antonio Gibson is still running with a very loose grip on the ball. And we've seen him fumble in key moments now several times. The one that just, there's a couple that stand out. The most notable to me, for whatever reason, is the one in week 1 against the Chargers. I mean, that was, again, like, you can't give up the ball in your own end of the field inside the 20. The Chargers ended up scoring. But this one, today against the Panthers, the team was rolling. I mean, they were driving, and he had back-to-back, or maybe there was one pass sprinkled in there. He had like 30 yards just on that drive with a chance to get a touchdown. He fumbles. He gets pulled from the game. We see McKissick. We see Patterson. We see other people run the ball. He basically doesn't come back into the game or into the game plan until about halfway through the third quarter, which was kind of interesting as well. So the keys coming in for the football team: control the clock, limit the turnovers, convert half of your first downs. And this is one that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about here, okay? So the football team comes in atrocious, absolute garbage on third down. And if you throw in fourth down, ironically, they're impressive on fourth down, but overall, they're not converting at a clip that is healthy enough to say that they are doing it well or comfortably. Okay, most times you see them in a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. FP and I talked about this. It's going to be 3rd and not, because they're going to run a 4-yard route or whatever. They're not going to get those yards. Today, they go 6 for 13 on third down, but they do go 2 for 2 on fourth. And both of the fourth down conversions were quite impressive. One went to Humphreys, and I believe the other one went to Bates, if I'm not mistaken. Both were throws. Both were timely. Both were key. So 6 for 13 on third down. They go 2 for 2 on fourth down. So we're talking about 8 for 15. They actually went over 50%. We'll take it, right? I mean, they ran 65 plays. 8 of them happened to be on third or fourth down. You're going to take that. I mean, from a stats perspective, it's still not, amazing, but they don't have to be amazing. It's an average team playing against an above average defense that today performed not like themselves. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Carolina just didn't look like the defense that we've seen in weeks past. So control the clock, check. Limit the turnovers, check. Convert on half the third down attempts. Yeah, I think we're going to give it to them. Again, 3rd and 4th down efficiency when combined together, they look good. We'll take it. And then we have the fourth key or the kind of the last nugget was get over 20 points, and they did that. And 27 is if you score 27 points in the modern NFL, you're going to probably win more games than you're going to lose. In reality, again, this team probably had 30 or maybe 35 in them. If Gibson doesn't fumble on that drive in the second quarter, there's a couple of other opportunities probably where there was a drop. Like, there was a couple things that happened that maybe they get a little bit more. But a win is a win. 27 is more than 21. So put that in the win column for the football team. On the flip side, we talk about the Panthers just for a minute here. The Panthers coming in, I as somebody who watches a fair amount of football, and I'm not a red zone guy, so like when I sit down to watch a game, I'm watching one game usually, sometimes two, depending on what's on, what's on the CBS affiliate here in DC. And then, as the night progresses, or once my football team is done ruining my Sunday in most cases, 6 out of the 10 weeks, I will, I'll flip over. I'll watch some of the national talking head shows. I do enjoy NFL primetime still. I don't know why. I get a kick out of Boomer, but I'll be interested to see what he has to say about the football team tonight. Minus the sound effects, which I can't. I mean, they've been annoying me for most of my adult life, but whatever. I'll keep watching for some reason. And I'm interested to see what the big NBC folks have to say as well. Primarily Drew Brees. I think he's a really good analyst, and I'm curious just to see if they even discuss Washington now that they've improved to 4-6. In light of what happened around the league, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves here in DC, but there was a lot of craziness in the NFL today. I mean, it's all over the league. The Eagles were facing the Saints. Obviously right now the football team is below the Eagles in the standings, even though we haven't played head-to-head. But coming into the week, the Eagles were 4-6. They improved to 5-6 today with a very, very impressive win. And that pains me to say, to be honest, but it's a very impressive win over the Saints. I mean, the Saints were coming in with the top-ranked rushing defense. We saw them earlier in the season. I mean, they were giving up, 70 yards, 80 yards a game? They got dunked on for like 200 today. I mean, who had that? Who had that happen? I didn't have that. So the Eagles, they beat up on the Saints, who were in wild card playoff contention, right, with a game up on the football team. And the Packers lost a weird one to the Vikings, and I've said this too. Like, the Vikings, they are much better than a 5-5 team, and Kirk is having arguably his best season as a pro. That team is not a 5-5 team. They've lost at least 3 games at the buzzer or close to it, and in overtime. I mean, they lose in very, very painful ways. That game is probably going to be the game of the week. I would imagine that the NFL Network is going to replay it, the Packers-Vikings game, but the Packers go down as the top seed. The Panthers go down, obviously, because the football team beat them, and the Saints lose. So if you're doing the grasping, reaching, difficult, calculus, football calculus, playoff calculus for the football team, they're actually in a desirable position right now with a lot of NFC competition still ahead. But you look again around the NFL. Okay, the Eagles win. I didn't have that, but okay, we haven't played them head to head yet. In the NFC, the Packers lose, the Panthers obviously again lose, the Saints lose. We'll see what happens with the Cowboys. They're playing right now against the Chiefs and losing at the moment. And in the AFC, I mean, the Titans and the Bills, and I feel embarrassed to say this because I keep coming back to the Bills as a team that's going to be around, and that the football team kind of held their own against, even though they got blown out. But they got some points, and they didn't. It was respectable by the end of the game. Maybe you could argue that. I would argue that because I'm a football team fan. But I mean, there's big teams that lost everywhere today. I mean, by the time the late window closes, the playoff picture is going to look very different as we sit here, halfway or almost halfway through week 10 with, a Monday night game tomorrow night that will have implications for the NFC East as well. So it's a very interesting, tomorrow's going to be an interesting Victory Monday. And again, around DC, every show is going to be rah-rah with callers calling in, and ours included, with people saying, well, if you can get this win and you can get this win, and okay, and we can entertain all those, and it, it's not my favorite radio, but I'm happy to listen to it for a little bit and give in and talk about it too. I'm more interested in the games that could have been. And there's an irony there because you can't go backwards. But what if, they had held their own and actually beat the Broncos, a team that they should have been able to beat, right? 4-6 at 5-5, you feel a lot better at this stage in the season, right? The Chiefs did not have a particularly great game when they came to DC. That you could argue that it was somewhat winnable until in the third, fourth quarter or towards the end of the game. Okay, that could have been a win. And the Saints is the other one, right? I think the Saints game is ultimately the one that's going to come back to hurt the football team because, again, direct competition, wild card. I expect Tampa to find, to get their sea legs under them and go into New York and win. So I don't think ultimately the Saints have a shot at their division, but they're going to be comfortably into the playoff mix, I believe. That's of course, can Trevor Siemian keep this up? I mean, there's a lot that goes with that as well. But back to the football team. They got some breaks that they needed today. Okay, there's some teams that they needed to lose lost. The Eagles at this point in the season, they got them by a game, but they haven't played each other head to head, and the head to heads are going to matter. So some things are definitely breaking in the football team's favor at the moment. But this game in particular today against the Panthers, I think there's some things that they have to be able to repeat if they're going to be successful moving forward. And I want to frame this part of the conversation. And again, if anyone's wants to call in, the phone lines are open, 855-908-5668, or you can drop comments. I see some comments coming in. Some of them are just not appropriate, or I'm not going to read them. There's a couple that came in here. One from Razzle Dazzle says, as a great team win, can they do it again? Yeah, I think they can. I also see a comment coming in here from someone named Harley223. Harley, thanks for the comment. Football team played a complete game, arguably their best offensive game of the season, although the point total is low. Yeah, I think you can make that claim. I think that's a fair assessment. They ran the ball today very well. I mean, the football team outrushed, let me say this differently. The football team, I think, had a total of 180 yards through the air and almost 200 or 195 on the ground. That's not common in the NFL. That's really not common for this team. Usually you're going to need your quarterback to do more, but they had around 370 yards total offense, and almost 200 of them were rushing yards. And conversely, again, from a defensive perspective against the Panthers line up at, Cam Newton, say what you want or what you will about him, he can still play the position. The offense may be different. He can still step in and sling the ball. I think he is, I don't want this to sound disparaging, but he's probably better even coming in off the street than Sam Darnold is at this point in time, if he was healthy. I know Sam started super hot, but Sam has always been very streaky, and it seems like defenses can figure him out a little bit. Cam is still Cam Newton, and I know some people aren't going to like this, but like, as much as I want him to be successful, I can't cheer for him. And it has nothing to do with his team playing against my team, against a football team today. There's just something about the Superman thing and the I'm back screaming on the sideline. Like, I don't know if you need to do all of that, right? Like, think about this, right? He scores a touchdown today I think it was in the second quarter, where he basically just keeps the ball on a read option and outruns, I think it was Cam Curl. Cam Curl was cheating towards the inside, and Cam runs him, basically just outruns him to the corner, to the pylon. And he scores a touchdown, and it was a very good play, 20-ish yards or so, rushing touchdown for Cam Newton. And in my mind, all right, like in my mind, I turned away from the TV because I'm expecting him to run to the camera in the end zone or maybe to the stands and then do the Superman thing, and because it's coming. He's very predictable in that regard, right? Well, what does he do? Does he hand the ball to a teammate, maybe celebrate together? No. Does he even do the Superman thing in where he's standing? No. He has to make it all about himself. He takes the ball and sprints to the middle of the field, to the 50-yard line, to spike it and do the Superman celebration while screaming at himself or at the air by himself, just standing there by himself. And I will never understand that, and I will never support that. You're hardwired to care. If you care more about yourself as opposed to your team, there's just something that bothers me about that, right? And again, it's a great individual play, but how much more would it have meant for his teammates if he celebrated? Again, do your stupid celebration, but just do it with everyone standing around you. Why remove yourself from that celebratory place in the end zone where you just scored? Why take yourself out to the middle of the field to make it all about yourself, or even more about yourself? Like, I've never been on board with that. I just don't like that look. And Cam, for whatever reason, he's never been able to stop. I mean, even last year when he was in, last year when he was in New England, I mean, he couldn't stop then either, right? It's just always about himself, and it's just not something that personally I find attractive. I don't know what else to say. I would prefer my quarterback celebrate with his team, when something awesome happens. But regardless, coming in, the Panthers, I think their game script was pretty straightforward. Can we get Taylor to make mistakes? Can we get him to throw some picks? Can we get him to hold on to the ball a little bit too long? Well, they succeeded in some of that, right? I mean, again, if you watch this game, especially in the second quarter, Taylor struggled a little bit to find a groove. And he was ducking when he should have been sprinting forward. And he was holding onto the ball when he probably should have either buried it. I mean, he took a nasty hit too late in the game where he got twisted up like a pretzel. And it actually, to me, I think they whistled it dead, but otherwise you could have argued that would have been a fumble. I mean, that ball was moving around. He got bent over backwards, and I forget who it was, but somebody was punching at the ball, and it inevitably did come out. But the Panthers coming in, they wanted to see if they could get to Taylor. I mean, again, they have a top-ranked defense. Could we get to Taylor Heineke? Can we force him into mistakes? Yes, kind of, today. He missed, I mentioned earlier in the show, he missed Terry McLaurin on a 20, 30-yard route, or maybe 25-yard route or so in the middle of the field to extend a drive. He missed them high. Back-to-back passes in the end zone, or when they were driving in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter. I believe he missed Patterson. He missed Carter in wide to the right, and then he missed McLaurin wide to the left. And McLaurin was wide open. I mean, wide open. So, yes, they were able to influence him and get him to maybe, again, fade away while making a pass or something of that nature. But ultimately, I don't think people are going to remember that. It was a homecoming for like half of the football team as well, which should be noted. And I just saw that comment come in also. That's from our pal Tony just put a comment in saying, people forget that this was a homecoming for more than just Ron. It feels like half the team was from Carolina or spent time in Carolina. And that's a good point. Yes, this is true, right? And there's a lot of players on the current Washington football team that are holdovers or carryovers or comeovers from the Panthers. I mean, that's just what it is. Including Joey Sly, who deserves a little bit of love here. Went 2 for 2. He hit all his extra points, plus an extra one where they were trying to freeze him, or maybe it was a late game. I don't remember. But, for another week, we will not discuss the kicker, and that's a win in my book because Ron just completely messed that situation up with Hopkins, etc. So, again, the keys to the game, if you were Carolina coming in, can we make Taylor make some mistakes? They were, we'll say, not successful. Obviously, they lost the game. No interceptions, no fumbles. Taylor played. He played as well as anybody could play at the quarterback position when you complete 16 passes, but throw 3 of them for touchdowns, right? So, yeah, Carolina also, I'm sure, came in thinking we should be able to run against this somewhat soft and porous defense, especially, now that Chase is out. And again, go back and look at these stats. The rushing stats for Carolina, 111. Coming into the game, if I told you that McCaffrey was going to rush for under 60, you would take it. I mean, you would say, okay, that'll give us a chance to win. But not only did they do that, they also held Cam. I think let me pull up the numbers here so I'm not misquoting. Cam completed 21 passes for under 200 yards, 189 yards. He did get 2 touchdowns. Cam also ran the ball 10 times for 46, including his long 20-yard touchdown or 24-yard touchdown run. So half of the rushing yards came on 1 carry. But doesn't matter. He still scored a touchdown on it, of course. But McCaffrey, 10 carries for 59 yards. I mean, 6 yards a carry is really nice, but only 10 carries. He did most of his damage today as a receiver. 354, I believe, career receptions now for him. And they flashed the infographic on the screen. I mean, he's the fastest player to do it, 50-something games, beating, setting a new record as opposed to Alvin Kamara, I think, who did in 66 games. But again, regardless, Christian McCaffrey, he catches everything, and I wrote that in my notes as well. This guy literally catches everything. I mean, you can throw it. He's got like Terry McLaurin type hands. I mean, you can throw it anywhere around Christian McCaffrey, and he's going to catch it. And if he tucks it, he's going to run with it. And he has the ability, of course, to make people miss. I mean, he somehow, after all this time, he's still underrated. And I know there's some injury woes there, and there's some questions about his toughness and can he survive a full season and whatever. I hear all that. But watching him for an entire game and really just focusing on, again, not red zone, focusing on one team, one game, he was really impressive to me as well. I mean, he can make people miss as a running back. He can catch everything when asked to be a receiver or a receiving option. And the player that I thought was going to have more run, given again the I want to say soft, but yeah, soft defense, the football team, that secondary, I expected more out of Robbie Anderson. I mean, Robbie Anderson catches 5 for 30, and his 2 of them were basically on the last drive of the game. I mean, meaningful catches, but it's the end of the game. Like, what happened to him from the jump? I mean, I expected some deep shots from Cam. I think he only attempted 1 pass over 30 yards, which is a little bit surprising. DJ Moore, I know he caught the touchdown, but 7 targets, 5 catches, 50 yards. I mean, it's not a bad line. But if you were game planning to play against the Washington football team, knowing that Chase Young is out and this defense is susceptible to long passes, I mean, Landon Collins is playing closer and closer to the box, and Ron earlier this week driving everybody crazy. It's a safety, it's a nickel, a Buffalo safety or whatever. Like, they're going to call it whatever they want to call it, but Landon is playing closer to the line in some hybrid safety, linebacker position, which is perfect actually when you're playing against someone like Christian McCaffrey. So if you were the Panthers, you're thinking, okay, we can come out here, we should be able to complete passes to the sidelines and down the field, especially down the middle of the field. Cam only attempted 1 pass over 30 yards today. That's shocking. I mean, I would have never expected that. I would have taken that. I mean, if you told me that before the game, I'd say, why? What? I mean, Robbie Anderson is faster than anyone on the Washington secondary. Anyone. He catches 5 for 30, and all of them were, dink and dunks. I mean, 6-yard average, but the longest, I think, was 12 yards. 14 yards. 14 yards, and it was at the end of the game. And it's questionable because it didn't look like he got that second foot in. And he did bobble it out of bounds, but that's all besides the point. Right? Tommy Tremble catches 2. Like, there's just something didn't look right about the Carolina Panthers today, and it's, whatever. I mean, the Washington football team, they did what they needed to do. They kept Cam in front of them. They kept McCaffrey, for the most part, in front of them. There was a busted play. McCaffrey got free for his touchdown catch, which was a really impressive passing catch, but Cam Newton had, again, you couldn't have picked a better team for him to start against coming back. And honestly, like, who had Cam only completing 21 passes against the football team? There's no way. And again, the football team needed everything to go right for them to win this game. They needed to be able to control the ball, limit the turnovers. They needed to be able to create some type of pressure, maybe create their own turnovers or get Cam to make some mistakes. They got most of that done today, and they looked good doing it. Again, without Chase Young, especially again without Chase Young. And you can say what you want about his performance thus far in the season, right? And statistically, and him and the Montez and chasing the sack records and all that noise, but you're removing a top 2, 3, 5 caliber talent. You're taking him off the field and asking everyone else on the defense to step up. Jonathan Allen stepped up today. Deron Payne played a good game, including the sack, or that I think they only gave him a half sack to close out the game on 4th down, sacking Cam Newton to end the game. So again, like the defense looked better than expected considering the opponent. Right? I mean, I expected McCaffrey to touch the ball. If I'm the head coach, right? If I'm the head coach of the Panthers, I'm going to run Christian McCaffrey 25 times and wear down the Washington football team defense. They didn't do that. If I'm coming in and game planning against the football team, I'm going to tell Cam Newton, hey, they don't have corners that can cover 30 yards down the field, and they have a safety who is allergic to pass coverage. So when you see him cheat up to play his Buffalo nickel thing, where he's trying to take away McCaffrey or your tight end, audible out and throw the ball 30 yards down the field. Someone is going to be able to outrun Cam Curl or whoever is being asked to cover downfield. It's not going to be Landon Collins because like I said, he's allergic to pass defense. So for Robbie Anderson to not get targeted more than 20 yards down the field, for DJ Moore basically, again, to not have the opportunity to catch and run against a secondary that's very susceptible to it, those are all wins. And the football team deserves a lot of credit for it. And Jack Del Rio in particular, who I think many people have seen that ship sail out of town and are anxiously awaiting a new defensive coordinator, he definitely made some adjustments at halftime. And the defense looked prepared coming out. And I've given Ron a hard time many times for choosing to defer or starting on defense. The football team and the Packers coming in today lead the league in opening possession touchdowns. And it certainly looked like it was trending that way. And I mean, ultimately that's where we ended up, if I'm not mistaken, right? It looked like it, and then it happened. And, about halfway through the first quarter, about 10 minutes into the first quarter, 5 minutes in the first quarter, around 10-minute mark, Cam with the fake handoff keeps it afloat. Just an awesome play, actually. It is a really well-designed play. And I'm surprised we didn't see more of it, to be honest. Cam faked the handoff to McCaffrey and then faked the keep, run up the middle, and then tossed it to DJ Moore for a touchdown. And that was the type of play where you basically can freeze the front four completely. The secondary, again, is susceptible to pretty much anything. Anytime you do a pump fake or just you can look them off pretty much. And they have improved. Fuller played a much better game today as well. But that was an impressive play, opening drive. They got their points to start the game. And again, if you're Carolina, you got the second-ranked defense in the league. Like, this is a defense that can ball against an offense that really cannot, even though they've looked apart in spurts, like series or maybe quarters, but not long stretches. And, on the opening possession, if I'm not mistaken, it starts with Gibson running for 4, then he goes for 2, and then there's a throwaway on 3rd, and it's a punt, 3 and out. And I remember I turned to some of the guys I was watching the game with, and I said, like, that's not the type of drive that you want to start this game with, given that the Panthers have the capability. Like, Cam is going to do his Cam bid. He's going to do the Superman thing. He wants to show out. He wants to beat the coach that wouldn't bring him back or bring him to his team. Like, for Cam, again, because he's all about himself, Cam was going to give you his best. And, okay, like, I expected it to go a little bit worse, but coming back, Washington forces a 3 and out. And they did it in convincing fashion. McKissick then is on the field at that point, and that's right after Gibson's fumble. And I think this is one of those things where Antonio Gibson is going to be as successful in this league as his ability to stop fumbling, because he can run, and he's converted to the running back position. He knows how to read a defense. He knows how to pick up a blitz, even though he's a little bit undersized, but he can do it. You can split him out and ask him to play receiver or at least go catch a ball, even though they don't really do that a lot. They prefer McKissick in that role. Gibson's shifty enough to make people miss in the backfield. He's tough enough, and we saw it today consistently. Gets hit, grinds out a couple more yards. Gets hit, grinds out some more yards. But we've also seen him, unfortunately, fumble in very, very terrible circumstances, or under in terrible situations, including when your team is down 7, the halfway through the first quarter, towards the end of the first quarter, you can't fumble the ball. And you really can't fumble the ball after you've steamrolled, players on back-to-back drives. It's your 3rd carry in a row. You're thinking touchdown. You're thinking at least one red zone opportunity to get in and get a touchdown. Not to say that the players care about fantasy, but as a player, especially as a running back, like, you want to score. And at that point in the drive, Antonio Gibson is largely responsible for them being in the red zone, because he's the one that got them there. So to fumble in such a anticlimactic and just weak way, and it's a tough word to hear, but it's the truth. It was just a weak play. He's running through the line. Someone literally the defender, the Carolina Panthers defender, grabbed his fingers on the ball and just opened his palm. It's like a game you would play with your kids. Like, here, like, make a fist and see if you can open my fist. That was my initial thought. Like, how can you fumble with such light contact? But that's what happened, and that's what happened. And to end the first quarter, I think it should be noted as well, another just absolute circus catch from Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin continues to prove time and time again, not only is he the best receiver that we've had here in DC for many, many years, and the list is getting shorter and shorter when we talk about his accomplishments through X number of games with this uniform on his back, with this team's colors on his back. He's on a trend. He's on a trajectory where he is going to achieve some pretty amazing things individually, and do some really amazing things for this franchise. Taylor threw a 50-50 ball at best towards the sideline to end the first quarter. Terry makes an adjustment. The ball was in the air, it seemed, for like 5 minutes, and I remember thinking, this is going to get picked off, or he's just going to let it sail over his head. He made an adjustment. He made the grab. He brought it down. That's what kept the drive ultimately alive. And then it obviously the second quarter starts at that point, and that's when Taylor zipped the pass, and I mean zipped. Probably the hardest thrown pass I've seen him throw as a pro, with the exception of the Ricky Seals touchdown in week 2 against the Giants in the corner. That was a zippy pass as well. But Taylor absolutely zipped the pass to Cam Sims for the touchdown to tie the game up at 7-7. And I remember at that point thinking, all right, this defense, that the Panthers defense is probably not as good as their stats say they are. And the Washington defense, if they can just kind of keep Cam in front of them and CMC from going bananas, no long runs, no long completions, then there might be a shot here to win the game. And ultimately, that's what happened, right? But this was it's a complete win, and I don't know how to say it any other way. To beat a team like these, are two teams that are as equally matched as you could have, right? They have one has a much better quarterback and running back. But that quarterback, nobody really knows how good he could be at this point. CMC's in a different league. The defense is great. The special teams, I think you could maybe say the special teams for Washington between the punting and even the field goal kicking, just a smidge better than Carolina. But this was a winnable game, and it was a 50-50 game. I know Ron wanted to win. He obviously lost this head-to-head matchup last year here in D.C., so he wanted to get this game, but it was critical for the football team to get this game, and they got it. 27-21, and again, What if they had beat the Broncos, right? A team that they are better than, that they should have been able to beat. What if they beat the Broncos? What if they hold their own just a little bit better against the Saints? What if they win the Chargers in week 1? That was a very winnable game as well. I mean, we forget they only lost that game by 4 points, and it was due to a fumble late in the game in our own or in the Washington football team territory. Gibson puts the ball down. Herbert gets it back and scores a touchdown. But overall, they were trending towards a victory in that game. So if it's just the Chargers and the Broncos, you go from 4-6, you go 5-5, you go the other way now. You're 6-4. We're having a totally different conversation here as we look forward about what this team can and can't do as far as making noise in the division and potentially qualifying for the playoffs, right? And there's a comment coming in here from John Jay. If this team wins 1 or 2 more games looking back, or 1 or 2 more moving forward, they should soundly be in the playoff mix given the NFC opponents they have to face. Yeah, 100% true. And this is where I mentally and emotionally have to pump the brakes and say, hey, I don't know if we're ready to have this conversation. The team is 4-6. They're inconsistent on offense. They're playing better defensively. They have improved. I think you can say that. They've improved defensively almost every game now for the past month. Antonio Gibson is running the ball better. I know he's still playing with that injured shin, but he's looking better. Terry McLaurin continues to shine. And the quarterback play, it's not spectacular, but it's not costing them games either. I mean, the team was able to beat Tom Brady. The team was able to beat, today, Cam Newton. The team was in the mix to beat Justin Herbert, essentially, effectively with the same quarterback, right? I mean, I know Fitz started that game, but Heineke played the majority of it. So, do we want to talk about what happens next? I mean, is it worth considering where they go from here? I think it's worth considering. I mean, we're grasping, and I think we need to be honest with ourselves as well. The team is 4-6, and they're chasing a whole bunch of teams, and they've lost to teams that they will probably have needed those tiebreakers, to be competitive with, right? I mean, the Saints tiebreaker in particular is going to really hurt. They have one on the Falcons, although they're falling apart. The Bucks really isn't. The Bucks and Packers, they shouldn't factor in. I think both of those teams will win their divisions respectively. But yeah, I mean, looking forward, they do have the tiebreaker now against the Panthers. They have one game against the Giants. I don't think the Giants will factor in too much as well. But the football team only has one AFC team on the schedule. One. And that's the Raiders. And that might be a winnable game. I know it's in Vegas, and hopefully our very humble show will be there live, which would be pretty cool. Who says no to Vegas, right? But outside of the Raiders on December 5th, the rest of the games are against NFC teams. Most notably, of course, is 2 against the Cowboys and 2 against the Eagles. So yeah, mathematically, until they lose some of those games, I mean, the Raiders game, they can lose it and still be in the playoff mix, in the NFC playoff mix. But the Seahawks next week on Monday night, that's a big game. That's a big game. And the way the Seahawks are playing, even right now, that's a team that they should be able to beat, right? And I say that, and it's hard for me to say that because, again, if you're a football team fan prior to the name change, I don't know if they actually added any after the name change. I don't know if anybody woke up and said, "Oh, I'm going to be a football team fan." But if you were, riding with the Skins or with the football team, going back as far as I can remember, most notably, I think in 2006, the Seahawks have been the reason that the football team has either not made the playoffs or fumbled out of the playoffs or been derailed in the playoffs consistently. This is a team that DC just struggles against. And for the last, decade, it feels like, 2012, when Russ came into the league, the Seahawks have been, one of the better teams, better franchises, better coach teams, just talent top to bottom, Legion of Boom. And then for a while, they had Marshawn. I mean, they've always had DC's number. Well, that's not the case this year. And they look like a team that can be beat. And if the football team can do that, they can make this 2-game win streak a 3-game win streak, I think the national narrative around the football team will start to change very quickly, especially if it's in similar fashion to how they won today. No turnovers, 200 yards of rushing split amongst all the different ball carriers, no interceptions from Taylor, and a sound defensive game. That means Landon is not leading the team in tackles, or frankly, any of the secondary players shouldn't be leading the team in tackles. I think today Cam Curl played arguably his best game of the season. He did lead the way with 7. William Jackson played a complete game, 3 tackles for him. Cole Holcomb played better than I think most people anticipated. I think there should be some Cole Holcomb love throughout DC. I think he's never going to shine and really just knock your socks off, but he's as consistent as they come. I mean, you know exactly what you're getting from Cole week in and week out, and he played a fair game today. We saw a fair amount of Jamin Davis. There was a couple mistakes, you pulling people forward on a tackle. There's a couple things here and there. He's still starting to. I don't know if he's coming around fully. I don't know if you can call him. I don't think it's fair to call him a bust. I mean he's still a rookie, of course, but we're starting to see him more and more, and I like that. And I really like, again, Landon Collins is a friend of the show. We've had a chance to talk to him in the past. He's a really cool dude. I like that he's not near the top of the tackle list, right? That means that he wasn't chasing. He was where he needed to be. And similarly for Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller, I think, only got targeted 3 times in the entire game today. Cam just wasn't looking at Fuller. They were really trying to pick a little bit more on Cam Curl and Danny Johnson, or that's the way they were leaning anyway, and against the linebackers as well. But defensively, the team played a good team game. And if they can replicate that against the Seahawks to improve next week on Monday night, and there's the whole primetime curse, and we could talk about that next week. That's not for now. This team will have meaningful games. Again, regardless of what happens with the Raiders, but they can beat the Raiders. But regardless of what happens with the Raiders, if they split with the Cowboys and Eagles and get that last one against the Giants, they're going to be in the mix, and this game against the Panthers is going to help. The game against the Saints is going to hurt, but they're going to be relevant. And I think, again, if you're a DC fan, I'm a DC fan. The worst thing is when we're talking about nothing in December, when we're talking about March and the upcoming draft in December. In December, nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Given the new playoff format, the extra team that gets in, this team is going to be relevant. This team is going to be relevant into December. And I think if we're honest with ourselves and we go back in time to the beginning of the season and say, do you want the team, or do you believe that the team will be relevant at the end of the season? The answer is yes. We expect them to be relevant. I think probably after the Bills game, the Saints game, the Chiefs game, the answer would have been something else. But look at it holistically. I mean, how many teams had them with 5 wins, 10 games through the season, right? The most notable or most winnable of the bunch being the Chargers. How many people had them beating the Bucs, or even the Panthers for that matter? So I think if you're a football team fan, and if you're one of the 150 people or so listening to the show right now, live, which is kind of cool, I'm going to say you probably, like me, want them to be relevant. And we're expecting them to be somewhere between 4 and 6 wins, somewhere around 5 wins, 10 games into the season. But no one had them beating the Bucs. And to follow that up, coming out of a bye with a win against the Panthers, I think that's a plus. And I think it should be noted as a plus. And I think people should hang their hat on that and say, this team can play down the stretch. They have winnable games still on the schedule. And if they play team defense in particular, the offense, we know, and we've seen it all season long, they can go and get points. There's one or two anomalies, most notably the Broncos, but the Broncos game where they should have been able to get more points. Washington should be in the conversation and in the mix. Seattle shouldn't scare anybody. Honestly, the Raiders are scarier because they got two running backs that can run the ball. They have a tight end who's going to run all over the place, against the football team. The Seahawks, I mean, yes, they have DK Metcalf. I mean, but someone has to throw him the ball. And right now, Russell Wilson just doesn't look like the Russell Wilson that we've come to see and watch over the last, 10 years. So, it'll be an interesting home stretch for the team. I think it will be anyway. So we touched on, obviously, all the high points for the Washington football team. I touched on some of the low points for the Panthers. I think if you're a Panthers fan, you're probably looking at this and saying, wow, this game against the football team is probably the one that's going to keep us out of the playoffs. They're going to have to get a whole bunch of games down the stretch themselves now. But that's the beauty of the NFL, right? Any team on any given Sunday can beat any other team. And again, it's a crazy league. I mean, right now in the late games, in the late window, the Chiefs are all over the Cowboys. I mean, the Chiefs haven't really looked like the Chiefs. They've been on and off. They've been a mix of good and bad, literally game by game, week by week. Right now, they're all over the Cowboys. If that result holds, well, that's going to make things a little bit more interesting in the NFC East as well. Right now the Vegas Raiders and the Cincinnati Bengals are basically they're tied or one possession game with Vegas driving. Vegas is 5-4. I mean, again, they're 1 game or 2 games, 1.5 games better than the football team. Like, why isn't it a winnable game? It is a winnable game. It should be a winnable game for the football team. I don't think they have any truly unwinnable games left on their schedule. The last one likely was Brady and the Bucks, but they beat them. So, I wish we still had a team song because I would be playing it. I'd be playing it nonstop, going in and out of breaks, and just, it's kind of odd actually that we don't have a team song here anymore in DC, and it kind of stinks because it's, with one name change, one signing of a pen, of a piece of paper with a pen, whatever. The song goes away, the colors stay, some of the history just kind of fades away. But why can't the football team beat the Seahawks? What about the Seahawks makes them so scary, especially here at home? Assuming that we get a fair amount of DC fans into the stands. I know it's a Monday night. I know in DC nobody wants to battle traffic to get into Maryland. I know nobody wants to go to that stadium. I know all of those things. But this team can win that game. It's a primetime game. All the eyeballs will be on us. And they have time to prepare. I mean, they have one extra day to get right. I'm sure all of them are sitting there, or maybe post-game treatment, etc. I would imagine Tuesday or Wednesday, Coach Ron's going to have them sit down and watch the Seahawks game in full and start talking about, how we can beat them. Because I think they can beat them. This isn't we need to control them situation. This is how do we go out there and pummel them. The Seahawks can't stop anybody from running on them. Their defense is just as leaky as the football team's defense. Why can't Gibson get 100 yards? Why can't McKissick add another 25 or 30? Why? It's possible. It's possible. Why can't Jared Patterson, get 5 carries for 20, 25 yards, maybe a cheap touchdown here or there, or late in the game? I think it's possible. And I think the team is good enough to do it. The stats that people won't focus on, or the things that people won't really pay attention to because it was a win, I think there's 2. I think it's Taylor only completing 16 passes, and I think it's Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, although they were in the mix a lot today, only basically tallying 3 tackles between the two of them, or 3.5 tackles between the two of them. I think those 2 things are likely going to be points of emphasis for the team this week, and I think there's an opportunity here for them to continue to make noise as the season progresses. And again, why not? Why not? They're good enough. They're good enough to beat the Seahawks. They're good enough to beat the Raiders. They should be able to hang with the Cowboys, although the Cowboys right now are getting pummeled by the Chiefs. So, I mean, if we get this Cowboys against our football team that played today, it's a toss-up game. I don't know if I'd pick them, but I mean, I think the Cowboys are just better built top to bottom, but it's a toss-up. Eagles, 2 games, toss-up. Giants, we should beat the Giants, although it's well documented how well Daniel Jones plays against the football team, assuming he makes it that far. But, let's take one more trip around the box score here for this one as we start to put a bow on this show. The football team travels to Carolina. They go down and win 27-21. We have a pretty balanced game. Again, I think that's the word of the day, right? The team was balanced top to bottom. Taylor completes 16 passes. Antonio touches the ball, 20 times, 19 times as a running back, goes just under 95 yards. If he keeps that ball and doesn't fumble in the first quarter, he probably gets over 100 and probably gets a touchdown as well, similar to his output from last week. McKissick, another complete game, averaging over 6 yards per carry. He added 1 catch, I believe, as well. Terry McLaurin continues to be a monster. And look, Terry McLaurin is a monster, and we should be extremely excited and happy that he's our monster here in DC. He is on another level. I'd love to see him catch the ball in stride where he can actually use his speed. Remember, his nickname, Scary Terry, was not because he had huge hands and could jump up and catch everything. That's what he's turning into. But Scary Terry, when Jay Gruden kind of coined the name and kept him under wraps, it was all about he didn't want people to know just how fast Terry McLaurin is. And he is fast, and you see it in spurts. You see when he makes his cuts. You see when he gets out into the flat, what he can do. With the flood route today is a good example of it. So can they improve? Can they find a way to get him the ball in stride and let him run with the ball, yards after catch, as opposed to just jumping up contested catches? I think that's probably going to continue to be a point of emphasis. On the defensive side of the ball, they kept CMC, planted under 50 yards or under 60 yards running. Rushing. Yes, he did have a bunch through the air. But Cam Newton, outside of one really long run and one really good throw, we'll see. We'll see if that's the new Cam Newton or if it was this defense really just able to harass him and make him uncomfortable. If you're a Carolina fan, I think the story and probably on the national stage, I don't think the talking heads are going to care so much about Washington winning this game. I think it's going to be painted as the Panthers lost the game, having an opportunity to beat a down team or a team that is viewed nationally to be worse than them. And it's going to be painted as a missed opportunity. And certainly in some cases, it is a missed opportunity. The Panthers, you can't have that good of a defense and then let the football team come in and put 27 on you. But, the national story is going to be Cam Newton celebrating by himself. It's going to be how, has he really changed? Is he really humble? Does he really care about his team, et cetera? It's unfortunate, but that's what's going to happen. So anyway, it's a win. It's a DC win, 27-21. We'll take it. We improved to 4-6 here in DC with the Seahawks coming up next in a primetime spot next week. For everyone that has hung out with me for the last hour, I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you to the Contender Network for carrying the show. And if you just found the show on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, click subscribe and stay engaged with us. There's a lot of content. We put out a lot of stuff specific to the football team, the Wizards, who look amazing, the Capitals, who are red hot. And when in season, we talk quite a bit of baseball as well. My name is Joe. This show is Defeating the Curse. We thank you very, very much for hanging out as we talk about this very important win for the football team, improving to 4-6 with some winnable games ahead. This should be a good one. If you don't hear from me until next week or before next week, happy Thanksgiving all around. Let's hope the Cowboys lose. Let's keep this winning streak going. We are 2-0 in the last 2 weeks. We will take it. Hail to the team. I guess for now, we're out. Thank you very much. Go football team. 27-21. The show is in the books. See you later. We're out.